The night he walked into my bar, I was already thinking about closing up early. It was one of those slow Thursdays when even the jukebox sounded bored. The regulars had left after the game ended, and I was half-heartedly wiping down the counter while debating whether I had enough energy to cook real food when I got home. Then the door creaked open and he stepped inside. I noticed him right away, not because he was loud or flashy, but because he didn't seem like he belonged. He wasn't dressed like a local. No flannel, no logoed hoodie, no steel-toe boots. Instead, he wore a dark green jacket that hung just right on his frame, jeans that weren't trying too hard, and sneakers that looked too clean for our part of town. His eyes scanned the place like he wasn't sure he'd walked into the right spot, then settled on me behind the bar. "Hey," he said, a little hesitantly. "You still open?" "Yeah," I said, tossing the rag over my shoulder. "Barely. What are you having?" He slid onto a stool, glanced at the taps, and said, "Whatever IPA you have that doesn't taste like soap." I raised an eyebrow, amused. "So you've been burned before?" He cracked a smile. "Once or twice." I poured him a pint of the local brewery's pale ale, less citrus, more hops, and watched as he took a sip. He nodded. "Not bad. You pick it?" "Of course," I said. "I don't serve soap here." He laughed, and I liked the sound of it. Quiet, genuine, not the forced kind you get from people trying too hard. "So," I said, leaning on the bar, "you passing through or new in town?" "Neither," he said, setting his glass down. "I used to live here, left about 10 years ago. Just visiting." "Visiting?" I echoed. He nodded, but didn't elaborate. That's how it started. No big moment, no slow-motion music swell, just two guys on opposite sides of a bar, talking like they had nothing better to do. He didn't offer his name right away, and I didn't push. There was something about his energy, guarded but not unfriendly. Like he wanted to talk but was waiting to see if it was safe. He asked me how long I'd worked there. I told him 6 years, though it felt longer. "Ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Every other Tuesday," I said. "But then I remember the rent's cheap and I get free drinks." He smiled again, a little more this time. Fair enough. I liked talking to him. There was something quiet about the way he listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak, but actually listening. He didn't interrupt. He didn't steer the conversation back to himself. And every once in a while, he'd say something that felt like a pebble tossed into a still lake. Something small that sent ripples outward in my mind. Like when he said, "I used to come here with my brother. This place hasn't changed much." And I said, "You don't seem thrilled about that." And he replied, "Not everything's supposed to stay the same." He stayed for 2 more beers, the place stayed quiet, nobody else came in. I didn't turn the lights down or flip the stools on the tables. I just stayed behind the bar, watching him relax, watching the way his fingers tapped absently against the glass between sips. Eventually I asked, "You got a name, or am I just calling you IPA guy forever?" He smirked. "It's Leo." I offered my hand. "Ethan!" His handshake was warm and steady. A pause lingered a little longer than necessary before he let go. "Nice to meet you, Ethan," he said. I nodded. "You too." I watched him leave when the night was finally done. He lingered outside the door for a moment, looking up at the flickering neon sign, then disappeared into the dark. I figured that was the end of it. Just another stranger passing through a place that never really changes. I didn't expect him to come back the next night. He walked in just after 9 p.m. the next night. Same jacket, same quiet energy. I was in the middle of making a gin and tonic for one of the pool league guys when I saw him slide into the same seat at the end of the bar. No hesitation this time. He gave me a nod, and I nodded back, trying not to let the stupid smile tug at my mouth. "You again," I said when I finally got over to him. "Me again," he replied, eyes scanning the row of liquor bottles like he'd been here a dozen times. "I figured I owed you for good beer and good conversation." "You make a habit of rewarding bartenders?" "Only when they're not assholes." "Well then," I said, grabbing the same IPA as the night before. "I'm honored." He took the beer, sipped it, and exhaled like he'd been holding something in all day. Then he looked around the bar, like he was searching for something familiar. "It smells the same," he said almost to himself. "Like floor cleaner and stale popcorn?" He laughed. "Exactly. It's weird how some places freeze in time." I leaned on the counter. "Let me guess? Nostalgia tour?" "Sort of," he said, fiddling with his coaster. "I grew up 3 blocks from here. Haven't been back in years. My dad passed last month, so I'm here to help my mom pack up the house." "Oh," I said, my voice softening. "Sorry, man." He nodded, not quite looking at me. "Thanks. It's strange being back. Everything's familiar, but not really. Like, the streets are the same, but I'm different." I didn't say anything. I just stayed there, close, letting the silence sit. "I used to come here with my brother," he said after a while. "He loved playing that busted jukebox. Would waste quarters trying to get it to play his shitty punk CDs. I smiled. "That thing's still busted." "I hope it always is." There was something about the way he said that, half amused, half sad. I wanted to ask more, but he finished his drink too quickly, like he didn't want to stay in that memory for long. "You want another?" I asked. He looked up, and for the first time, really looked at me. "I probably shouldn't," he said. "Long day tomorrow." I nodded, grabbed him a water instead, and set it in front of him without a word. He smiled. "Thanks. You always this polite?" He tilted his head. "Only with bartenders I like." I felt something stir in my chest. It had been a while since anyone flirted with me in a way that wasn't sleazy or overconfident. His tone was light, his eyes careful, but I could feel the weight behind the words. I cleared my throat. "So what do you do when you're not revisiting your childhood or charming strangers in small-town bars?" "I work in fundraising," he said. "Non-profits mostly. Mental health orgs." "That's unexpectedly noble." He shrugged. "It pays shit, but I like it." I liked that he said it without any hint of pretension. Just a fact. Like he didn't need to impress me. Like maybe he didn't care if I was impressed or not, but somehow still hoped I was. The bar started to quiet down. People filtered out, and soon it was just Leo, me, and the usual hum of the ice machine behind the bar. I glanced at the clock. Close to midnight. "I should probably let you close," he said, standing up. I hesitated, then said, "You can stay a bit. I mean, if you're not in a rush." He paused, eyes on mine. Then he sat back down. "All right," he said, voice lower now. "I'll stay." I grabbed 2 waters and joined him on the other side of the bar, sliding into the seat next to him. It was a quiet kind of companionship. Nothing flashy. Just 2 guys in an almost empty bar, the air between them slowly shifting from casual to something else. He didn't ask why I sat down. I didn't ask why he came back. We both knew. The bar was officially closed. Lights dimmed. Chairs flipped. Register locked. But Leo was still sitting at the counter, his hands wrapped around his water glass like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I hadn't said much after sitting down next to him, and neither had he, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Like we were both waiting to see what might happen if neither of us pushed too hard. "I forgot how quiet it gets here at night," he said finally. "Most people think it's boring," I replied. "I think it's peaceful," he nodded. "Yeah, I miss that." A beat passed, not just the town, he added, but the quiet. I looked over at him, and in the dim light I could see the way his jaw flexed slightly, like he was holding something back. "You okay?" I asked. He gave a small shrug. "You ever come back to somewhere you thought you outgrew, and realize maybe it's still a part of you?" "All the time," I said. "That's why I never left." He turned his head toward me, his eyes searching. "You ever regret that?" I hesitated. "Sometimes, but not tonight." The way he looked at me then, it wasn't dramatic or intense, but something shifted, like he saw me differently all of a sudden. Or maybe like he'd been seeing me this way since last night, and I was only just catching up. You know, he said, his voice lower, I didn't come back to this bar just for the nostalgia. No. He shook his head slowly. I remembered there used to be this guy here. Bartender. Kinda quiet. Always made the best whiskey sours. I felt my face warm. That was me. I know, he said, smiling. I remembered you. I hadn't expected that. We must have only crossed paths a few times years ago. He'd have been, what, mid-20s? I didn't think I made much of an impression back then, but apparently I had. I remembered you too, I said, almost without thinking. And I had. Not vividly, not in perfect detail, but in the way you remember a song lyric that made you feel something once. He turned on the stool, now fully facing me. I was going through a lot back then, trying to figure some stuff out. I didn't know who I was yet. I nodded. A lot of people don't. I think I'm getting closer, he said quietly. There was something incredibly vulnerable in the way he said it. No bravado, no smirking defense, just honesty. Yeah, I said, my voice just as soft. He nodded, his eyes not leaving mine. I think coming back here helped. I didn't know if he meant the town, the memories, or sitting here with me. Maybe it didn't matter. We sat like that for a while. Close, but not touching. Talking quietly about nothing. Music we liked, dumb movies from our teens, food that still tasted the same after all these years. Every so often, our knees would brush under the bar, and neither of us moved away. Eventually, he glanced at his phone and sighed. I should head back. I nodded, not wanting the night to end, but not knowing how to ask him to stay. Leo stood, pulled on his jacket, and hesitated. Can I see you again? I met his eyes. Yeah, you know where to find me. He smiled. Same time tomorrow? I'll be here. He walked to the door, paused, then looked back. Thanks for the drink. And the quiet. Anytime, I said, and then he was gone again. I stood behind the bar for a long time after that, staring at the empty seat he'd just left. For the first time in years, I was actually looking forward to tomorrow. By the time Friday night rolled around, I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since high school. It was ridiculous, really. I'd worked that bar through breakups, power outages, even the night a drunk guy punched the jukebox for skipping his favorite song. Nothing rattled me, but waiting for Leo to walk through that door again, that did something to me. I kept glancing at the clock, cleaned the bar top twice, rearranged the liquor bottles. He said he'd be back. But people say a lot of things. Then, just after 9, the bell above the door jingled, and there he was. Same seat, same small smile. Different jacket this time, brown leather, worn just enough to look cool without trying. I slid him a beer without asking. You remembered, he said, lifting the glass. I remember a lot of things, I replied, more confidently than I felt. He took a long sip, then leaned forward, elbows on the bar. It's weird, he said, how natural this feels. This, he motioned between us, you, me, talking. Like we're not basically strangers, I shrugged. Maybe we're just good at pretending, he grinned. Or maybe we've done this before in some parallel universe. I liked that idea. I liked the way he made everything feel both new and familiar. There was something easy about being around him, but also something quietly electric. Like any second, the whole thing could change. We talked again for hours. This time, more openly. He told me about his job back in the city, how burnout had crept in slowly, disguised his ambition. I told him about the bar, how I took it over after the old owner had a stroke, how I never planned to stay this long. You ever think about leaving? He asked. All the time, I said, but I've got my routines, my people. And what if the right person asked you to go? I laughed, deflecting. Are you asking? He smiled, but didn't answer. The bar emptied out slowly, and by 11:30, it was just us again. I poured us both waters, sat next to him. He was quieter tonight, Still present, still engaged, but softer somehow, like he was working something out in real time. "You ever meet someone," he said finally, "and feel like they're supposed to be in your life, even if you just met them?" I looked at him, heartbeat loud in my ears. "Yeah," I said. "I think I have." He nodded slowly, like that's what he'd been hoping to hear. He glanced down, thumb tracing the rim of his glass. I keep thinking about how I used to come here when I was younger, just hoping someone would see me. Not flirt with me, not try anything, just see me. You know? I did, more than he knew. "And now?" I asked. "Now I feel like I'm finally being seen." We sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick, charged, like the air had shifted, and we were both waiting for someone to say the next thing. Eventually he said, "You don't have to say anything, I didn't want to leave this town again without saying that out loud." "Are you leaving?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shook his head. "Not yet." And then, so casually it almost didn't register, he added, "I want to stay a little longer, if that's okay." I didn't answer right away, just reached across the bar and placed my hand over his. "Yeah," I said quietly, "that's more than okay." After that night, Leo became a fixture, not in an obvious, flashy way. He wasn't suddenly showing up every night or hanging off my every word, but he'd come in every couple of evenings, usually close to closing, like he knew I'd make time for him. Like we had an unspoken agreement, no pressure, no expectations. Just us, in this weird little pocket of time that didn't belong to anyone else. Some nights he talked more, some nights less. Sometimes we barely said 10 words, but still managed to feel close. And slowly, I started to notice the way his presence changed the air around me. How I'd glance at the door more often. How the shifts without him felt longer. How I'd catch myself smiling before he even sat down. The regulars noticed. A few made dumb jokes. "Hey Eli, your boyfriend's late tonight." But I shrugged them off. Let them talk. I didn't know what this was yet, and I wasn't in a rush to define it. I just knew I didn't want it to end. One night, about 2 weeks after he first walked back in, he showed up looking tense. Not angry, just distracted. He didn't order a beer, just sat at the bar, rubbing his hands together like he was trying to get warm. "Rough day?" I asked as I slid a water over. He looked up. "Just spent 3 hours in my mom's attic going through boxes. Found all this stuff from high school. Old photos, letters." He paused. "I was kind of a mess back then." I leaned on the bar. "You seem pretty put together when you showed up here." He let out a dry laugh. "That's the trick, isn't it? Look like you've got it all figured out, so nobody asks the hard questions." "You want me to ask?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Not tonight," I nodded. "All right," but before I could walk away, he said, "Can we go somewhere after?" It caught me off guard. He'd never asked to see me outside the bar before. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "Where?" "Somewhere quiet. Anywhere." After closing, I locked up early, and we got in his car. We didn't talk much on the drive, just listened to the hum of the heater and the gravel under the tires. He took us out of town, toward a hill I hadn't been to in years. Locals used to call it the Ridge, a little overlook with a view of the whole valley. It was late, the sky cloudy, but the lights from the town still shimmered below. We got out, stood next to each other, letting the silence settle. "I used to come here with my brother," he said after a while, "before he left for college. It was our thing, this spot." I didn't say anything, just waited. "He's not around anymore," Leo continued. "We don't talk, haven't in years." I glanced at him. "What happened?" "I came out," he said flatly. He didn't take it well. There was no drama in his tone, no sadness either, just a resignation that made my chest tighten. "I'm sorry," I said. He shrugged. "It's not your fault. I guess seeing those boxes today reminded me of what I lost, or who I used to be." He looked at me, eyes darker than usual. "But then I thought about you, about this, whatever this is." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. He stepped a little closer. "Eli, I don't know what I'm doing here. in this town, with you, but I feel, I don't know, pulled towards something. I swallowed hard. Me too. There was a pause, not a hesitation, just a breath, a quiet understanding. Then he reached up, gently, and brushed a bit of hair from my forehead. His hand lingered, and I leaned in. The kiss was slow, careful. Not fireworks, not some cinematic moment, just two men standing in the quiet, feeling the gravity of each other for the first time without trying to escape it. When we pulled apart, he didn't move away, just rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "I needed that." I whispered back, "Yeah, me too." We stayed like that for a long time. No labels, no promises, just warmth in the cold and the steady hum of something finally beginning. The next day, I expected things to feel different. They didn't, at least not in the way I thought they might. Leo still came in around 9, still slid into the same stool, still gave me that tired, half smile that said more than words ever could. But there was something else now. Something warmer underneath it all. Like we were finally both in on the same secret. He didn't bring it up. The kiss, the drive, the way we stood forehead to forehead like we were afraid to let go. He didn't need to, and I didn't either. That's the thing about certain moments. They don't demand to be spoken about. They just change everything quietly. I served him a beer, and when our fingers brushed this time, neither of us pulled away. "How was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He exhaled through his nose. "Better than yesterday. I told my mom I'm staying a little longer." "Oh?" She asked why. I told her I needed more time to sort things out. I smiled. "And did you?" He looked at me. "I'm working on it." He stayed late that night, and when the bar cleared out, we didn't say anything for a while. We just sat in the dim light, sharing a basket of fries and letting the silence do the talking. He kept looking at me, like he was trying to memorize something. Finally, he said, "Can I ask you something kind of stupid?" "Always." "Why did you stay here?" I thought about it. "Because this town knows me. Because I got used to the rhythm. Because I thought it was safer to stay still than to chase something that might not want me back." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." "You?" I asked. "Why did you leave?" He took a sip of his drink, then stared at the glass like it might answer for him. "Because I needed to figure out who I was without all the noise, without everyone else telling me." "And did you?" "Kind of," he said. "But I think I also lost something along the way. Some piece of me I left behind. And now you're back looking for it?" He looked up. Maybe I already found it. There was something about the way he said it, so soft, so certain, that I didn't know how to respond. I didn't have to. Later, as I walked him to the door, he paused before stepping outside. "Do you want to come over?" he asked. My heart kicked in my chest. Not because I hadn't thought about it. I had. A lot. But hearing him ask it out loud made it real. "I get it if you're not ready," he added quickly. I don't know. I don't want to be alone tonight," I nodded. "Yeah, okay." His place was a rental just outside town. Small, clean, kind of impersonal, like he hadn't planned on staying long enough to make it feel like home. But once the door closed behind us, none of that mattered. We didn't rush anything. There was no need. He poured us both a glass of wine. We sat on the couch. Close. Our knees touched. Our fingers found each other, rested between us like they'd been there all along. At one point, he looked at me and whispered, "Is this okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, it is." And then we kissed again. Slower this time. Deeper, the kind of kiss that doesn't just ask for something, it offers something in return. We didn't sleep together that night. We just lay there, fully clothed, in each other's arms. His head against my chest, my hand tracing lazy circles on his back. The kind of intimacy that's more about trust than lust. He fell asleep first, his breath evening out, his body finally relaxing like it hadn't in weeks. And me? I just lay there, heart full, staring at the ceiling. I'd kissed a lot of people before, but this felt like the start of something real. I hadn't spent the night at someone's place in years. Waking up next to Leo was quieter than I expected. There was no rush, no awkward shuffle, no second guessing. Just the weight of his arms slung across my stomach, the soft breath against my shoulder, and the creak of the floorboards as the house settled in the morning light. His alarm went off. Soft jazz, of course. And he groaned, burying his face against my side. "You okay?" I murmured. He nodded against me. I forgot how good it feels to wake up next to someone. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." We stayed like that for a while, tangled up, not saying much. Eventually, we got out of bed. He made coffee while I stood awkwardly barefoot in the kitchen, unsure whether to help or just stay out of the way. He handed me a mug without a word. Black. No sugar, no cream. He remembered. "So," he said, leaning against the counter. "That wasn't weird, right?" "No," I said. "Not even a little." He smiled into his cup. "Good." We didn't label it. We didn't talk about what it meant. But something had shifted. We both felt it. The way our shoulders brushed more deliberately now. The way our eyes lingered a second longer. The way I caught myself wanting to text him on my lunch break, just to say I was thinking about him. We started spending more time together outside the bar. Not a lot. He still had packing to do, and I still had shifts to cover, but enough that people started noticing. One night, after we'd gone for a drive out past the river, he said, "I used to think I'd never have this." This? Yeah. Someone. A real connection. I figured I missed the window or ruined my chances somehow. I reached across the console and took his hand. "You didn't." He turned to me, his voice low. "Neither did you." I squeezed his fingers. Some nights we stayed at his place. Some nights mine. It was quiet, domestic in a way I hadn't expected. He'd read while I made dinner. I'd do the dishes while he picked out something dumb for us to watch. Once, we got into an argument over whether or not Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie, and I caught myself smiling the entire time. That's how I knew. This wasn't just chemistry. It wasn't just timing. This was right. But just when it started to feel like we'd found our rhythm, reality crept back in. It was a Saturday night when he told me. The bar was busy, and I was slammed, but he waited for me like always. Sat through the noise, the crowd, the chaos, just to talk to me when it all died down. "I got a call," he said as I poured him a water. "Yeah? The nonprofit I used to work for, they want me back. Full time. A bigger role this time. More responsibility. It's in Chicago." I nodded slowly, the words settling heavy in my chest. "When would you go?" 2 weeks. I leaned on the bar, heart in my throat. "Are you going?" He hesitated, then met my eyes. "I don't know." There it was. Everything we'd built, everything we were starting to become, it was suddenly balanced on a thread. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't know what to say. The next few days passed in a strange blur. Leo still came by the bar, still kissed me when no one was looking, still fell asleep beside me like he always had. But something hung in the air now. A quiet, lingering question we hadn't answered yet. One I wasn't sure I wanted to. I didn't bring up the job. Neither did he. Instead, we did what people do when they're pretending everything's fine. We held on tighter. Stayed up later. Touched more. Talked less. Until the night before his flight. He hadn't booked it, not officially. But he mentioned the date once, casually, like he needed me to know, even if he couldn't say it directly. That night, we stayed at my place. Ordered takeout. Watched half a movie. Barely touched our food. "I hate this," he said quietly. "I know," I said. "Me too." He shifted, resting his head on my chest. "I don't know what the right thing is. This job, it's important. I've worked years to get to this point. It's everything I thought I wanted." "And now?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "I didn't expect to meet someone like you," he whispered. I ran my fingers through his hair. "Then don't go." He looked up at me. "You'd really want me to stay?" "Leo," I said, "I don't want you to give up your career, but I also don't want you to walk away from something real, because it's scary." He sat up then, looking at me fully. I'm scared too, I admitted. I've never done this, really done this. But you being here with me, it feels like something worth risking things for. He blinked, like he was holding something back. Then he leaned in and kissed me, slow, deep, final in a way that didn't feel like goodbye. That night, we didn't sleep much. We didn't talk about the flight. We didn't talk about what we were. We just held on. The next morning, I woke up alone. There was no note, no text, just silence and the cool side of the bed where he'd been. I didn't go to work that day. I told the manager to cover for me. Said I was sick. It wasn't a lie. I stayed home, pacing, waiting for a sign. Around 5 p.m., I got one. The door to my apartment buzzed. I opened it to find Leo, holding 2 coffees and a backpack slung over one shoulder. I didn't go, he said out of breath. I got to the airport. I stood at the gate, and then I realized something. I just stared, heart pounding. He stepped inside, set the coffees down, and took my hands. I realized I've spent my whole life chasing things because I thought they'd make me feel whole. But I've never felt more like myself than when I'm with you. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? It means I'm staying, he said. For now, maybe longer, I don't know. But I'm not ready to let this go. I'm not ready to let you go. I pulled him into a hug so tight we almost lost our balance. He laughed into my shoulder. I felt the tension leave both our bodies. He stayed the night. He stayed the week. Eventually, he found a small place to rent. Nothing fancy, just a little apartment not far from the bar. He started doing freelance consulting work for nonprofits remotely, building something new from the ground up. And us? We kept going, day by day, week by week. Some days we still didn't know what we were doing, but we knew what we were. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. It wasn't a love story that started with sparks and fireworks. It started in a nearly empty bar, with a tired man and a quiet bartender. But it turned into something real, something that stayed.